An orphan boy gets possessed by a legendary demon sword when he was about to die. Later on, he finds out that he has become immortal. Our story begins with a young girl crying while beating Shino's chest, begging him to stay alive. Everything around them is on fire and destroyed. Shino has a huge injury on his chest and cannot move or talk. He gets lost in his final thoughts about how he couldn't protect his family. Filled with regret and sadness, he recalls losing his parents when he was young and taking in Hamaji, the little girl, and Sosuke, who is also lying by his side, injured, on his deathbed. They became his family, but now he has lost it all. Suddenly, a mysterious man appears from the flames, holding a sword, and offers it to the dying Shino, asking him to make a decision. Shino decides to accept the offer to stay alive. 5 years later, we see Shino in a moment of calm, swimming in a river with the guardian of the place, when a crow named Murasama brings a disturbing one-eyed insect, sending a chill through Shino that prompts him to get rid of the insect. Later, in the village church, Shino finds Hamaji preparing tea, which turns out to be quite unpleasant. Meanwhile, Sosuke becomes involved in the life of a boy named Kenta, who faces abuse from his father. As Sosuke and Kenta head towards the church, they discuss the dangers of the forest and the rumors circulating about Sosuke in the village. Through conversations and memories, it is revealed that Shino's village was destroyed by a disease, and he and his friends are the only survivors, now living in a neighboring village. After the incident in the forest, where Kenta is saved by an amulet given by Sosuke, Shino is summoned by the central church, which is seeking Murasame. When he refuses to go, a confrontation ensues with hooded figures from the church, ending with the intervention of the crow Murasame. The danger escalates when Kenta reports disappearances in the forest and a spirit that resembles Shino. Concerned for Kenta's safety, Shino and Sosuke take him away, but their warning is misunderstood, leading to a confrontation and the abandonment of the amulet given by Sosuke. The tension reaches its peak when Hamaji finds the amulet and realizes that Shino has run into the forest. Sosuke, transformed into a dog, joins the search. The final confrontation occurs when Shino and Sosuke face the spirit that threatens Kenta, revealing Shino's ability to transform Murasame into a sword. After rescuing Kenta, they learn of Hamaji's kidnapping by the 5 foxes of the Ozaki house, linked to the central church. With the revelation that the central church seeks to control the power of the 4 blood families, including Shino and Sosuke, the two set off for the imperial capital in search of Hamaji. Although Hamaji was kidnapped, she is actually treated as an important guest, with all her demands being met. At this point, we meet Kaname Osaki, the one responsible for the kidnapping. He tells Hamaji that he only needs her to lure Shino and Sosuke, so he will provide all the comforts until they arrive. Kaname mentions having heard that the women of Otsuka village were extremely beautiful. Hamaji responds that this is true, and also that Shino used to dress as a woman and had a beauty similar to that of a doll, because in Otsuka village it was customary to dress boys as women until they turned 15. On the other hand, Shino and Sosuke arrive in the capital and are received by envoys from the church. Ryo Satomi also appears, who turns out to be the man who gave Shino the sword 5 years ago. Shino recognizes him and tells Sosuke that Satomi is from one of the 4 beast clans. Satomi leaves Shino and Sosuke at a hotel before departing in his car. Shino takes the opportunity to leave his jacket with Sosuke and sets off to explore the capital. While walking, Shino hears rumors of a demon that only eats monsters and spirits. As he passes by a temple, Kobungo Inuta appears, being thrown out of the temple by Seiran and landing on top of Shino. Kobungo had been arguing with Seiran because he suspects they are holding a man named Genpachi inside the temple. Kobungo's father arrives to calm the situation, and upon seeing the mark on Shino's arm, takes an interest in him and invites him to eat as an apology for having fallen on him. During the meal, Kobungo asks Shino where he lives, but Shino says he doesn't remember. At that moment, Murasame and Sosuke in his dog form arrive looking for Shino, who takes the opportunity to leave, leaving Kobungo to pay for all the food. Shino and Sosuke return to the hotel, with Sosuke in his dog form, asking who the man he was with was. Meanwhile, Seiran talks to his boss about the demon trapped in the temple, suggesting they could release it into the city since it only eats spirits, but warning that it could be dangerous if it eventually starts eating humans. We then see that the supposed demon is Genpachi Inukai, who has a mark on his face, the same mark Shino has on his arm. The next day, Shino wakes up in his room and finds a giant white dog, which turns out to be linked to Satomi, who is also present. Satomi is surprised that the price Shino paid for using Murasame was not aging. He explains that the spirit Murasame is extremely powerful, comparable to the power of a god, and that the price for that power is likely Shino's life. Both invoke their spirits and almost engage in a battle right then and there. Just then, Sosuke arrives to calm the situation, and they end up eating together without any problems. Meanwhile, Kobungo is worried about Genpachi, who turns out to be the fiancé of his late sister, Nui Inuta. We see a memory of Genpachi and Kobungo together in the middle of a snowstorm, where they both apparently managed to survive a confrontation. Back with Shino, Sosuke, and Satomi, they all arrive at the place where Hamaji is. Upon seeing her, Hamaji throws a shoe at Shino's face for taking so long, but then hugs him. Kanami appears to greet them, and Shino reprimands him for kidnapping Hamaji. However, Kanami responds that he only invited her, just like he did with Shino and Sosuke, and invites them inside to enjoy a banquet. Hamaji, upon seeing Satomi, finds him familiar. Later, the whole group enjoys a stroll through the neighborhood, but they are being watched by an insect controlled by Seiran, who discovers that Shino has the essence of a spirit. Seiran tortures Genpachi using insects to reveal his true demonic nature. Meanwhile, Kaname is found drinking when Hamaji appears, whom he invites to join him, but she declines the offer. Kaname expresses his preference for Hamaji's company and his concern about being left alone if she goes with Shino. Meanwhile, Shino is reading in his room when Sosuke enters, and after bathing, Shino dries Sosuke's hair. During this moment, Sosuke asks Shino about his relationship with Satomi, to which Shino reveals that Satomi saved them 5 years ago and gave them the chance to live in exchange for harboring a monster within their bodies. Sosuke questions if Shino is okay with living as a child forever, to which Shino responds affirmatively, emphasizing that being together with Hamaji and Sosuke is what matters. The next day, Hamaji, Kaname, Sosuke, and Shino set out together to explore the capital. Elsewhere, Kobungo gets into a fight with some soldiers over Genpachi's dismissal, but accidentally falls onto Shino as he passes by. As an apology, Kobungo invites Shino and Sosuke to eat at his house. Meanwhile, Kaname and Hamaji continue their tour of the capital, where Kaname notices Hamaji's interest in attending school upon seeing a group of students. Kaname speaks with Satomi so that Hamaji can go to school, and also informs him about the capture of a demon by the Shogetsu Brotherhood, emphasizing the need to protect Murasame. After dinner with Kobungo, Shino and Sosuke head to visit Satomi to find out why they were summoned to the capital, bringing Hamaji along with them. Satomi shows them 2 relics they lost when they were children, representing duty and devotion, respectively. Satomi tasks them with finding the other 6 relics and their owners, revealing that they are part of a legend. Despite Shino's initial reluctance, Sosuke accepts the task. Meanwhile, Kobungo's father pleads with Seiran to release Genpachi, revealing that Genpachi's fiancé died in an accident and not because of Genpachi's fault. However, Seiran refuses, arguing that Genpachi is now a demon due to the torture. Genpachi, freed by his transformation, encounters Shino and Sosuke outside the city and pursues them. Kobungo follows them to a bridge, where a confrontation ensues. Shino confronts Genpachi, who attacks him but then remembers his fiancé and hesitates, showing signs of humanity. However, the Shogetsu Brotherhood appears led by Seiran, who recognizes Murasame and orders them to attack the 3 with arrows. Shino deflects some arrows, but both Genpachi and Sosuke are injured and fall from the bridge. Shino leaps after them to save Sosuke. Hamaji, worried about the absence of Shino and Sosuke, receives comfort from Kaname, who suggests that she should start attending school. Meanwhile, Shino, Sosuke, and Genpachi are carried away by the water current, but they manage to float using a one-eyed insect that swells upon contact with water. Shino asks Murasame to find Satomi. Later, the 3 arrive at Kobungo's house to rest, where Satomi's dog also arrives. Genpachi questions Shino about his nature, but Shino responds that they are similar and that one should not judge by appearances. During dinner, Kobungo reveals to Shino how Genpachi and he acquired the ability to regenerate after an encounter with demons in a village 3 years ago. They found out that everyone in the village, except Saihime, died, and Kobungo wonders why the Shogetsu Brotherhood is after Shino. Shino reveals that it's because of Murasame. Meanwhile, Seiran argues with his superior about the search for Shino, and after a disagreement, Seiran kills his superior using his insects. Genpachi, accompanied by the one-eyed insect he decides to call Megu, is feeding it when Seiran and his brotherhood attack Kobungo's house. An intense battle ensues, during which Sosuke and Shino fight against the insects, while Kobungo and Genpachi confront Seiran's forces. In the midst of the battle, Seiran provokes Genpachi by revealing the tragedy of his fiancé, triggering the transformation of both into demons. Seiran is gravely injured, and Kaname intervenes, using spirit foxes to scatter the Brotherhood. Kaname, revealing his half-brother relationship with Seiran, finally kills the latter in revenge for hurting Hamaji. With the house engulfed in flames, Shino uses his sword to summon rain that extinguishes the fire. In a moment of subsequent calm, Genpachi and Kobungo have a reflective conversation about truth and strength. Kobungo advises Genpachi to seek a strong woman who doesn't give up easily, hinting that Shino is that person. When Shino appears to check on their condition, Genpachi confirms that he has found that person. The next day, Shino wakes up in Kaname's house and explores the corridors, coming across a door decorated with snakes. As he ventures further, he sees some red eyes and is surprised by Satomi, who warns him about trespassing on private property. Satomi expresses concern about the fire from the previous night, but Kaname assures him that the Shogetsu Brotherhood will not hunt demons again. Satomi reveals himself to be the head priest of the church. Kaname inquires about Sosuke and Murasame, explaining that the weapon calms down during the full moon and on the 29th day of each lunar month. In a flashback, Shino talks to Sosuke about his illness and the idea of remaining a child forever. Later, he accidentally collides with Ayane, a member of the four families, who reacts violently due to the power of Murasame. Kaname reveals that Ayane is protected by snake gods and suggests reconciliation. Hamaji prepares a basket of flowers for Shino to apologize to Ayane and asks Shino to invite her for tea. Distracted, Shino enters a forbidden area and is attacked by Chikage, the guardian of the Mizuki. Sosuke intervenes to apologize alongside Shino. Chikage confronts Sosuke about his choice to remain in his current form rather than become human again. Sosuke explains his decision and agrees to cut off his arm as an offering to be forgiven, but Ayane intervenes and stops the sacrifice. Ayane scolds Chikage for his behavior and manages to get him to forgive Sosuke and Shino. Afterwards, Ayane thanks Shino for the flowers and reveals her fear of being rejected because of her appearance. Shino shows her the power of Murasame and assures her that as long as she has company, she shouldn't be afraid. Ayane meets Hamaji, and they enjoy each other's company. Hamaji mentions to Kaname Ayane's desire to go to the festival, but doubts that Chikage will let her out. Shino suggests using foxes from the Osaki clan to look after Ayane during the festival, and Chikage agrees. During the festival, Ayane, Hamaji, and Kaname have fun, while Chikage thanks Shino for providing Ayane with a friend. Chikage reveals his true name, Hibiki, and expresses his trust in Shino despite his fears about the power of Murasame. The next day, Shino asks Satomi for money to head to a village where 5 men died. After returning from a mountain infected with a disease, a group of youths, including Kokonoe, Kano Inusaka, and Asakeno, head to the same village to celebrate a festival. Upon arrival, they discover the village is suffering from drought, with the mountain being the only place where it rains, thanks to a monkey god who generates the rainfall. As Shino travels by train to the village, he reflects on what Satomi told him, that the 5 villagers who went to the mountain in search of water managed to return thanks to a mysterious woman who provided them with water and showed them the way back. When Shino reaches the mountain, his relics start to glow, but his distraction leads him to fall off a cliff. On the other hand, Sosuke learns that Shino went alone to the village and decides to follow him by train. Coincidentally, he encounters Kobungo and Genpachi, so the 3 of them decide to travel together. Returning to Shino, he wakes up from the fall and realizes he has lost Sosuke's marble. At that moment, the monkey god appears, who turns out to be enormous. Shino asks for help to find the lost marble, but the monkey god gives him a piece of gold instead. Though it wasn't what he expected, Shino thanks him for the gesture. Sosuke arrives with the other 2, and Genpachi asks why he's alone on the mountain. But when Shino is about to explain that he was with the giant monkey, it has already disappeared. Everyone decides to head to the village, but they are arrested as soon as they arrive. In the village, they meet Akane Saiki, the doctor and nun in charge of preventing the spread of a possible disease. She tells them how the 5 villagers who came down from the mountain began to gradually decompose, showing bones and resembling living corpses. They also meet Joji Sakuraba, Akane's medical assistant, who reports on Shino's group's situation. Akane visits Shino's group, introduces herself, and informs them that they need to undergo blood tests to check for the disease that worries the village. Joji then arrives, recognizing Genpachi and Kobungo as former comrades from the conflict in the north. While the doctors draw blood from Shino's group, Asakeno watches from outside and is shocked to see Sosuke, whom he mistakes for a man who had killed him and his family years ago. The next day, Akane releases Shino and his friends after confirming they don't have any disease, and she offers them accommodation in the church's room. Meanwhile, Asakeno talks to Kokonoe, telling him that he has found the culprit who took away everything he had, namely, Sosuke. Later, while Shino walks through the village's forest, Asakeno tries to talk to him, but Kobungo's presence makes him give up, and he withdraws. Later, while Sosuke cleans the church, he strikes up a conversation with Akane. He asks her if she has always lived in the church, to which she responds that she has been living there for 3 years, as her grandmother resided in that church before passing away. Akane tells Sosuke that it's likely the four of them returned alive from the mountain because of Shino, as the monkey god feels sympathy for children. When Sosuke is alone in the church, Asakeno appears, and they begin to talk about God. Suddenly, Asakeno becomes enraged, draws his sword, and reproaches Sosuke for a murderer to speak of God, showing his contempt towards him. After stabbing Sosuke, Shino intervenes to protect him. They both start fighting, but Asakeno manages to disarm Shino. When Asakeno prepares to attack Sosuke again, the latter transforms into a dog. Kokonoi steps in to defuse the situation, assuring Asakeno that the man he's looking for would never transform into a dog. To apologize, Kokonoi promises to fulfill any request from Shino, who asks him to search for Sosuke's lost marble in the mountain. While Kobungo tends to Sosuke's wound, he notices a mark on his neck, similar to the ones Shino, Genpachi, and he have. Meanwhile, Joji informs the others about the commotion in the village due to the piece of gold found by Shino, revealing that the mountain was a gold mine before it became contaminated. Shino suggests that the villagers investigate the reason why they shouldn't go to the mountain. Meanwhile, the monkey god remembers a deceased monkey named Asahi and reflects on his relationship with a girl who never returned, questioning his own existence due to the losses he has experienced. Shino and Sosuke are talking, and suddenly Asakeno arrives to apologize, and in the end, everyone accepts his apologies. Asakeno explains that Kokonoi saved his life and is like a mother and sister to him. Shino reflects on how a monster like Kokonoi saved someone's life. Meanwhile, Kokonoi talks to the monkey god about the passage of time and unfulfilled promises, questioning her purpose because of the people she loves, and then abandons her. On another note, Shino's group is kidnapped by the villagers, who want to climb the mountain to obtain water and gold with Shino's help. Using Murasame, Shino manages to send a note to Akane to inform her about the situation. While exploring the mountain, the group and the villagers find themselves trapped in a magical barrier that confines them. However, Murasame intervenes and breaks the barrier, revealing rain on the mountain. Despite the villagers' joy, their happiness fades when the monkey god appears, furious, and attacks the villagers, leaving Shino in a state of shock. Akane also climbs the mountain and encounters Asahi, recognizing him by the gold ring he wears on his finger. It turns out that Akane, when she was a child, was the one who gave the ring and the names to both the little monkey and the monkey god. Akane wraps Asahi in a cloth and bids him farewell. Kokonoi, who witnesses this emotional moment, asks Asahi if he could say goodbye, and with those final words, Asahi passes away. Kokonoi finds Sosuke's marble in the possession of Asahi, the little monkey. Shino, using Murasame, manages to prevent everyone from being swept away by the flood caused by the monkey god. They engage in a discussion until Akane arrives to calm the situation, apologizing for her delay and addressing the monkey god by the name she gave him, Shinonome. Kokonoi also appears to return Sosuke's marble to Shino. The others present ask Akane to talk to Shinonome to prevent him from destroying the mountain, but she refuses, arguing that there is no need to share the gold and water with greedy humans. However, she expresses her joy at being able to see Shinonome again, as when she returned to the village after becoming a doctor, she was already an adult. These words manage to calm Shinonome, who stops the storm. As night falls, the villagers confront Akane about the missing people on the mountain, but she and Shino's group ignore the accusations. Later, both Genpachi and Kobungo transform into demons to summon a storm and make it rain in the village. Finally, Shino's group returns to the capital by train, leaving behind the events in the mountain village. A memory surfaces where a man, on the brink of death from the cold, is rescued by a mysterious voice questioning his desire to live. He responds that he hasn't yet been able to reunite with his sister, whom he promised to see again, and wishes to spend the rest of his days with her. Returning to the present, Shino's group boards the train to the capital. As they search for their seats, they discover that the man they saw earlier is their compartment mate. While Sosuke heads to another carriage in search of a drink, Shino stays chatting with the man, named Dosetsu Inuyama. Suddenly, it begins to rain, and Shino remarks that it would be nice if it started snowing. As he finishes his sentence, for some reason, it starts snowing. However, the calm is interrupted when a drunken man appears causing trouble. Shino kicks him out, causing Megu, Sosuke, to arrive and drench him, turning him into a giant insect that squashes the drunk. They continue the journey in peace, but Dosetsu is completely amazed to see Megu. Meanwhile, Hamaji is very worried because Shino has not yet returned. At that moment, she has a vague memory from her childhood, when someone called her by another name, Mutsuki. Returning to the train where Shino's group was traveling, a monk boards at a station and senses a monster's scent. The monk advances through the carriages until he reaches Shino's compartment, where it inexplicably feels cold. The monk is about to attack, but from Dosetsu emerges an ice spirit that freezes the monk. Shino recognizes the spirit as Dosetsu, who calls herself Yukihime. Shino reveals that he once got trapped in a snowstorm in the forest, and Dosetsu saved him. Since then, they've been friends. Dosetsu asks Shino to make Yukihime stop following him, as ever since she saved him, his friends have abandoned him for being frightening, and he can no longer enjoy summer. Shino explains that if Yukihime leaves him, she will die, and she paid a very high price to save him, but Yukihime asks him not to speak anymore. After Shino's group arrives in the capital, Dosetsu thanks Yukihime for saving his life, and then bids farewell to Shino's group. Later, Sosuke asks Shino what Yukihime sacrificed to save Dosetsu, and he responds that she had a beautiful voice and loved to sing, so what she sacrificed was her voice. Shino and his friends arrive at Kabungo's house, and by chance, Asakeno and Kokonoe will also be staying there for a while, so they end up all eating together. Eventually, Hamaji moves to the school residence she's about to attend, as it's exclusively for girls, and she wants to avoid trouble. Kaname asks her why she wants to go to that school, and she responds that her goal is to become a doctor, to find a cure for Shino's original illness, allowing him to become human again. Meanwhile, Satomi scolds Shino for what happened in the village affected by the drought. It turns out that, although Genpachi and Kabungo managed to make it rain, they also caused floods and damage to some houses. After moving to the school residence, Hamaji asks Shino to bring her some books she forgot. However, since men and pets are not allowed in the school, he would have to pretend to be Hamaji's younger sister. As night falls, Shino enters the school while Sosuke waits outside. Meanwhile, in Hamaji's room, Suzu Kumagai appears, who happens to be her roommate. The two quickly strike up a friendship. Later, Murasami arrives at Hamaji's window to inform her that Shino is waiting for her in the backyard, so she heads there. Hamaji and Shino meet, chat for a while. He hands her the books, and then he leaves the school. However, in an unexpected turn, Shino is attacked by something unknown, causing him to scream and prompting Sosuke to go in search of him. The next day, at Kabungo's house, during the meal, Shino recounts that the previous night he saw a ghost, which turned out to be that of a doll. He tries to draw it to illustrate how it looked, but ends up drawing a plush toy instead, eliciting laughter from everyone present. Meanwhile, Hamaji meets Ruri Kobayakawa, who warns her to be more careful next time she goes out at night, as there is a guardian lurking during those hours. Intrigued, Hamaji later asks Suzu about the guardian, who mentions that no one has seen it, but she has sensed its presence. On the other hand, both Shino and Sosuke are persuaded by Asakeno to go to the school under the pretext of protecting Hamaji from the ghost, although they are actually motivated by curiosity. So, when night falls, the three investigate in the school, but just then the ghost appears, which matches exactly with Shino's drawing. The ghost reproaches Shino and Asakeno for bringing animals to the school and tries to punish them with rays. Sosuke apologizes, explaining that they only wanted to ensure Hamaji's safety, but now they trust that she has a guardian. Eventually, everything is resolved peacefully. The next day, Suzu praises Hamaji for having good friends who truly care about her, suggesting that perhaps she doesn't need so much protection. Confused, Hamaji responds that Suzu is her first friend and asks her not to say strange things. However, when Ruri invites Hamaji to eat together, she declines the offer, stating that she will eat with her roommate. This statement confuses Ruri, who reveals that Hamaji doesn't have a roommate. Alarmed, Hamaji rushes to her room and encounters the ghost plush toy. Sometime later, Satomi entrusts Sosuke with the task of acting as a priest in the church. While Shino observes him carrying out his duties, he is approached by Kohaku, a young woman with golden eyes. After engaging in a brief conversation, Kohaku attempts to leave the church feeling unworthy of receiving a blessing. However, Shino stops her by taking her hand, and while giving her a talisman, grants her his blessing. Later, as Asakeno walks, he comes across a suspicious individual. He pursues the person, convinced that they are the one he has been searching for. But just then, Genpachi appears, distracting Asakeno and allowing the suspect to escape. On the other hand, as night falls, we discover that Kohaku feels unworthy due to her work in a brothel. Returning to Asakeno, he converses with Kokonoe and recalls the moment when he was on the brink of death. The individual who resembles Sosuke murdered Asakeno's entire family, stole his father's sword, and cruelly tore out his heart while he was still alive. Despite this, Asakeno, with his last strength, managed to wound the attacker in one eye with his sword. Returning to the present, Shino rushes through Kabungo's house and accidentally crosses paths with Asakeno while he practices with his sword, almost injuring him. Sosuke arrives shortly after, and after chatting for a while, Asakeno asks him if he has any siblings. Sosuke hesitates, as he has few memories of his childhood. However, Shino senses the presence of another entity within Asakeno's body. At that moment, Kokonoe arrives, and Shino notices that his heart is not beating. Kokonoe reveals that when she found Asakeno, he was still alive despite the absence of his heart. Intrigued, she decided to transplant her own heart into Asakeno's body. Furthermore, she shows one of the spheres that Shino seeks, identified as wisdom. The next day, Kohaku wakes up happy after dreaming about her siblings, but her joy quickly fades when she starts coughing up blood, indicating that she has little time left to live. Shortly after, the individual resembling Sosuke appears to see her and offers her a deal. If she gives him her golden eyes, he will give her 1 more week of life. Meanwhile, some nuns make Sosuke work on restoring a church. Meanwhile, Shino meets Genpachi and Asakeno in one of the neighborhoods of the capital. Suddenly, Murasame senses the presence of a shadow, and shortly after, the individual named Ao appears, identical to Sosuke. Ao ignores Asakeno and tells Shino that he's glad to see him again, lamenting that Shino has cut the long hair he used to have. Furthermore, he tells him that if he wishes to become stronger, his desire will be fulfilled. These words surprise Shino, as they are the same ones he told Sosuke years ago. Ao assures Shino that they will meet again before disappearing. Genpachi asks Shino if he knows that individual, but Shino responds that he doesn't, although it seems like he knows him. As night falls, Shino asks Satomi about what happened and inquires about Sosuke's memories. Satomi reveals that Sosuke is missing half of his soul and that Ao is that missing half, as well as having his memories. Meanwhile, Asakeno decides to go in search of Ao, who has been watching him from a rooftop. At that moment, we see that Ao has one of Kohaku's golden eyes. Ao converses with a mysterious girl, who seems to have saved him in the past, and expresses his appreciation for Shino, justifying taking one of Kohaku's eyes because Shino liked those eyes. The next day, at Kobungo's house, Asakeno confronts Shino for information about Ao, but Shino denies it. Genpachi intervenes to calm the dispute. Kobungo becomes nervous upon seeing Asakeno, who also bears a similar mark to the others. Shino realizes that he is indirectly gathering all the marks. Shino and Sosuke go to the church under restoration and encounter Kohaku, who reveals her situation in the red light district, and her family. The nuns reveal that Kohaku was sold to the red light district as a child. Meanwhile, Shino is visited by Satomi, leading Shuichi to believe they have a close relationship. Shuichi takes Shino to the red light district as part of a trap, where Kohaku is threatened. Shino tries to intervene but is critically wounded by Shuichi. Murasame transforms and devours Shino. Later, when the military police are called in, Genpachi arrives and finds Kohaku embracing Shino amidst a pool of blood. Genpachi takes Shino away, who appears to be dead, but his wounds start to heal. However, Satomi arrives with his giant dog to take Shino and Sosuke away. Upon learning of what happened, Sosuke, Genpachi, and Satomi go to see Shino, who reacts and asks for some food. Shino explains that he was definitely dead, but thanks to Murasame, he was able to revive, and he takes the situation lightly, which annoys Sosuke, who slaps him and reproaches him for not taking what happened seriously. Later, when Genpachi and Sosuke leave Satomi's house, Murasame begins to lose control again. Shino decides to take a shower to relax and eventually falls asleep. Meanwhile, Kohaku is praying in the church for Shino's recovery when Sosuke arrives to reassure her, informing her that Shino is alright. They both converse, and Kohaku expresses her remorse for lying to Shino and causing his suffering. She wants to return the talisman Shino gave her, but Sosuke assures her that if he gave it to her, there's no need to return it. Kohaku feels relieved to realize that Sosuke and Ao may look alike, but they are completely different in personality. With this, she leaves for home feeling more at ease. As for Shino, Satomi finds him asleep in the bathroom, but when he wakes up, he is completely possessed by Murasame and undergoes a transformation, reverting to his natural appearance. Shino, thirsting for blood, attacks Satomi, who, aware of the situation, decides to let Shino consume him to calm him down. We see how Kohaku gradually transforms into a demon. Upon arriving home, she is greeted by her friend Chitose, but soon she experiences an intense craving for blood and loses control, devouring her friend in a frenzy. The next day, Kanemi brings clean clothes to Satomi, which at first seems like a strange gesture, but Satomi later explains what has happened and the change that Shino has undergone. On the other hand, Kohaku dreams of her past. After being sold by her family at the age of 8, she never had to worry about hunger or cold in the red light district. However, upon reaching adulthood, she was forced to satisfy the desires of all the clients. Upon waking, she realizes with horror that she has murdered her only friend, but soon she experiences an intense craving for blood again. Shino, Kobungo, and Genpachi go to visit Satomi, and Genpachi takes the opportunity to tell him that he has investigated Kohaku and discovered her past. At first, they thought it had no connection to Shino, but then they found Chitosu's corpse, and Kohaku disappeared. Meanwhile, Kohaku arrives at the gates of the church, but finds herself unable to enter. Sosuke realizes that Kohaku is no longer human and apologizes because he cannot save her, as he made a deal to continue living. Just then, Satomi arrives and, witnessing the scene, asks Kohaku why she wanted to keep living. Kohaku responds that she wanted to meet Satomi, as he was the only person who knew what truly happened in her hometown. When she asks why he couldn't save the villagers, Satomi explains that when he arrived at the village, everyone had already been killed, except for one person, Saihime. Kohaku begins to transform as she reflects on how, thanks to Shino, she was able to yearn for happy memories, even if they were false, but that someone like her should disappear. At that moment, Shino appears, and Kohaku recognizes him in his adult form. Shino draws his sword and reveals to Kohaku that, despite having an indestructible body, he still fears death and remembers the pain of his illness. Shino asks her if she is afraid, but Kohaku responds that she fears becoming a monster more. Shino approaches her and tells her that she is not a monster, but as beautiful as an angel. These words bring peace to Kohaku, and with this, Shino uses Murasame to give her a swift and tranquil death. Afterward, Shino feels guilty about what happened, but Sosuke arrives to console him. Sosuke goes to fetch tea, and upon his return, he finds Shino asleep, having reverted to his childlike appearance. Satomi is summoned by the Council of Elders of the Central Church, who become aware of what happened with Shino in the Red Light District. They deduce that Shino possesses immortality, as he has not changed his appearance in 5 years and has also been revived. Therefore, they compel Satomi to call for and bring Shino. The next day, while Shino is strolling through the capital, Ao appears and leads him into an alley. Ao asks Shino why he hates him so much, as he is also Sosuke. He tells him that 5 years ago, while they were descending a mountain and taking shelter from the rain, Shino saw that they had the same mark and declared that they were brothers in past lives. Ao proves that he has Sosuke's memories, which makes Shino hesitate, but he questions why Ao tore out Asakeno's heart. Ao responds that he needed it, as he has an incomplete body, with almost all the parts belonging to Sosuke. He has been taking parts from different people, including Asakeno's heart and Kohaku's eye. Ao warns Shino that when he gathers all the parts, he will come for him. Without Shino noticing, Ao reaches into Shino's pocket. Afterwards, Shino feels confused, and just then Sosuke arrives with him. Shino asks if he remembers what he told him when they descended the mountain 5 years ago in their homeland, but Sosuke responds that he doesn't, which saddens Shino. Kobungo appears and asks Shino why he's feeling down, to which he responds that it's nothing, and continues walking. Sosuke reveals to Shino that he was lying, that Shino told him they are brothers, but Sosuke felt embarrassed to remember it. Shino embraces Sosuke as he cries. When Shino and Sosuke return to Kobungo's house, Kaname's foxes inform them that they are searching for Shino, and have taken Kaname and Hamaji to find him. While Kaname meets with Hamaji at the central church, Shino and Sosuke attempt to force their way in, but encounter a barrier so powerful that not even Satomi's giant dog can break through it. After contemplating how to overcome it, Murasame accidentally shatters the barrier by impaling itself on it. Shino infiltrates the central church and encounters Lilith, who recognizes Murasame. A confrontation ensues in which Shino defends himself, but is ensnared by Lilith's spell. He manages to break free by using Murasame to create a mist and escape. He then hides under Satomi's priest robe, who protects him when Lilith searches for him. Finnegan appears, and upon not finding Shino, they halt the search. Shino successfully rescues Hamaji. As night falls, Asakeno, Genpachi, and Kobungo gather and discover that not only do they share the same marks, but each of them also has a small ball with a word written on it. Shino arrives and, upon seeing the other 3 balls, tries to retrieve his own, but realizes that Ao has stolen Sosuke's ball. During dinner, they reveal a legend related to the balls. 8 warriors fought alongside a princess named Fusahime to seal the evil spirit of a woman named Tamazusa, who had devastated the country within her body. The warriors lost their lives, and Fusahime, with Tamazusa's soul inside her, impaled herself with a sword in the chest, leading to the appearance of the 8 balls in the afterlife. According to the legend, the 8 warriors will be reborn and reunite someday, just like Fusheim, to fulfill their desires. Shino, Sosuke, and Genpachi go to the doll maker Imamura to collect a set of dolls for the elite members of the church. As they walk towards the house, they encounter an elderly man enjoying the flowers and also hear the voice of a child singing to the sakura trees. Confused, they continue to the house, where they meet Daikaku and Hinaginu, the doll maker's children. For some strange reason, the doll maker had disappeared without finishing the dolls. Shino demands that Daikaku, his heir, finish the dolls, but he refuses, saying he cannot capture the doll's expression. Angry, Shino mutters to himself while walking through the back garden, where a child throws a decorated ball at his head and tells him to leave Daikaku alone. Confused, Shino takes the ball and goes to beg Daikaku to finish the dolls, also noticing the many cat dolls in the room. Shino continues to inspect the house, where he finds a room filled with life-sized dolls. One catches his attention, and he is shocked. The doll was the figure of the woman who had killed them. He goes to Daikaku a second time and asks him about the ball and the figure. Daikaku knows nothing about the figure but can tell the story of his cat, who originally owned the mysterious ball. As night falls, Daikaku sees one of the sakura tree branches fall and suddenly regains the memory of the day he was killed, unable to comprehend how he is still alive. Murasame mentions the cherry blossoms, and Shino follows him, only to be hit on the head once more by the strange boy. Along with Genpachi and Sosuke, they watch in astonishment as the boy transforms into an orange cat. Genpachi plays along and transforms into his demon form, planning to eat the cat. He is stopped by a rude black cat, who is then stopped by the elderly man they had met before. It turns out to be Hinozuka Nachi, a member of one of the 4 houses of the sacred beasts. Shino confronts Nachi about the magical barrier surrounding Daikaku's house. Meanwhile, the young boy runs out and Shino chases after him. Daikaku remains in the room, slowly recalling the day of his murder. Shino confronts the boy and realizes he is Daikaku's cat. The boy falls from a sakura tree because his constant begging for flowers had begun to take a toll on the forest. Shino restores the forest to its original state by breaking the barrier, and the boy starts to fear the return of the killer who had tried to murder Daikaku. Daikaku realizes that his father had actually died and that the man who killed him will come for him as well. When the man killed Daikaku, his cat gave him the etiquette bead, which kept him alive. He now wonders how he is still alive. A sudden stranger visits them, muttering repeatedly, "Daikaku is my son." Daikaku nearly eats him, but the cat boy saves him. Satomi visits to find out what happened and scolds them for not bringing the dolls earlier. Shino shows Satomi the doll of his killer, but Satomi suddenly puts him to sleep and erases his memory. When Daikaku sees Satomi carrying Shino, he suddenly envisions the face of the doll and returns to complete it. The doll is finished, and they begin their journey back. Daikaku mentions that they will also move to the capital. Shino is forced to teach children to read and write at the church, where most of the children reject him. The children go out to play because Shino had never gone to school either, and he stays with a girl who asks him to read a book to her. Shino realizes that she is blind, and he mentions it to Sosuke. While reflecting on this, Shino encounters the owner of the pastry shop, who gives him free samples and asks for his opinion. He suggests curry and cheese buns, which the owner thinks is a great idea. Back at the church again, Shino stays with the girl and reads her a story about a bird. The owner of the pastry shop arrives at the church the next day and allows Shino to try the new samples, which turn out to be a great success. Shino learns that the girl's name is Kaho, and, as he writes her name on the ground, the other children become interested in writing. One child gets angry and messes up the writing, and due to Shino's temper, he receives a slap. Shino returns to the pastry shop to ask the owner about the new recipe, but his family receives him and quickly heads to the family altar. Later, Sosuke and Shino find out that the owner of the shop had been dead for over a month and that the shop was bankrupt. But Shino manages to save them by mentioning the recipes that he mysteriously helped the owner create in his final days. Meanwhile, Shino talks to the tough boy again and shows him that he can actually be a genuinely kind person, just as his name defines. Shino and Sosuke leave, and later Kaho is seen bumping into the other Sosuke. He smiles and gives her a pat on the head. Nachi returns to the capital and visits Satomi, who tells him about someone who is eliminating spirits in a village, and that the culprit carries a sword and has a golden eye. Shino, who is also present, already knows who the culprit is and wants to know more. Satomi mentions an incident of spirit hunting in the village of Musashi, which is in ruins due to the death of the regional deity of the place. Shino decides to go to Musashi, convinced that he will find the culprit there. Meanwhile, Genpachi is sent by the army to investigate the deaths in Musashi. At the deity's shrine, he meets a woman named Yana, who tells him about the deity of the village, which has 2 lives, and one is sealed in the shrine. Shino, Sosuke, and Kobango arrive in the village, and Genpachi greets them at the train station. Genpachi explains that there have been 8 unusual deaths in the past week, and the people blame the deity, Yana, who happens to be the woman at the shrine. Yana has 2 guardians, Takanobu and Saki, and she won't be able to receive visitors until next week. He also reveals that Yana's dog died that morning. The group decides to infiltrate the sanctuary. Sosuke transforms into his dog form and enters. Yana, upon seeing him, welcomes him with open arms, comforted by his presence since her dog Kuma died that morning. Yana shows Sosuke the seal on her leg, indicating that she is in the sanctuary because of that seal. The next morning, Shino searches for Ao, believing he is in the village. At the same time, some villagers cause a commotion at the sanctuary, demanding that Yana do something about the deaths. Yana, saddened and treated as less than human, falls to her knees crying, and the seal on her leg comes loose, incapacitating the group of villagers, except for one. Shino finds Ao in the forest and confronts him. Kino, following Ao to seek revenge, also appears, and a fierce confrontation ensues. Shino tries to separate them and intervenes, but Ao hits him, rendering him unconscious, and then wounds Kino in the chest. Ao reveals that Inusaka's parents took everything from him, and he promises to reclaim what is rightfully his, including the sword he carries. Ao takes Shino away. Inusaka arrives in the village to recount what happened and finds Sosuke in the sanctuary with Yana. Sosuke discovers that Yana freezes and remembers nothing when the seal leaves her body, returning only after the actions have been carried out. Upon learning that Sosuke's true owner has come, Sosuke rushes to the door and encounters Kango, discovering that Shino has been taken and that he hid Ao's existence from him. Shino wakes up in a shed in the forest. Ao reveals that he eliminated the other vessel of the regional deity to control the deity, showing the seal on his arm. Sosuke, with Kino's katana, is on his way to rescue Shino. Ao wants to take the other seal that is with Yana to fully awaken the power of the deity, believing that she is drained from her time in the sanctuary. At that moment, Sosuke appears. Shino tries to prevent it, fearing the imminent confrontation between them. Shino tries to dissuade Sosuke from fighting, aware of the uncertain consequences of killing Ao, which could result in Sosuke's death. Despite his efforts, Shino fails to separate them. Ao demands that he choose between them, an impossible decision for Shino as he considers them indivisible. The situation escalates when Ao cuts Sosuke's arm, seriously injuring Shino in the process. Shino's rage triggers the aura of Murasame, and the seal on Ao's arm reacts, breaking free from him. Yana transforms into a dragon, and the fight continues in the sanctuary. Meanwhile, Princess Yana overhears Takanobu and Saki arguing about the seal on her leg, which apparently is related to the murders in the village. Surprised by this revelation, she encounters Genpachi and heads into the forest. In the forest, the other Yana explains to Shino and Sosuke that they were originally one, but were separated by humans, one imprisoned in the earth and the other sealed within a human. Yana reveals that her other half is suffering in the sanctuary, and Princess Yana wishes to die for the actions of her counterpart. Shino and Inukawa return to the inn, where they discover the severity of Sosuke's arm injury. Meanwhile, Ao reveals his plan to absorb spirits to match the power of Murasame. Genpachi invites Shino to the sanctuary the following day for an urgent matter. Takanobu and Saki are concerned about not being able to present Yana at the Oracle event due to her foul mood. Princess Yana reflects on how people perceive her only for the deity within her. The next day, during the Oracle consultation, Shino joins Takanobu and Saki when they are informed of a serious issue with Princess Yana. They discover that her body is covered in scales, indicating her deterioration. Despite her condition, the princess is determined to fulfill her duties. Takanobu and Saki plead with her not to give up, considering her as their sister and only family. Shino realizes that he cannot help unless Princess Yana expresses a desire. Sosuke reflects on how difficult it must be for her to give up her role as a guardian. When Princess Yana faces the villagers, they pressure her to solve the murders instead of granting wishes. Genpachi intervenes and takes her to a quiet place to express her desire. Finally, Princess Yana reveals her wish to become solely Yana. Genpachi brings Princess Yana before Shino, who accepts her wish. He releases Yana from her body, and the two entities merge, causing the scales on Princess Yana to disappear. She decides to rest in a new vessel, proposing Shino as a candidate, but he declines, as he already has Murasame. Meanwhile, Shino proposes to make Ao his vessel, and Yana agrees, threatening to eliminate Sosuke. Shino strongly opposes this, promising to protect him. Sosuke discovers that Ao has stolen his gem, which motivated his pursuit. With everything resolved, Shino asks Kobungo to have Takanobu, Saki, and Yana work at the inn to start a new life. Kobungo agrees and assures that he has sent a letter to Shino's mother. Shino discusses with Hamaji, Sosuke, Conan, and the foxes about Satomi's reprimand for the gem. Nachi arrives looking for her spiritual cat, Kaide, who has gone missing. Shino agrees to help search for her, knowing she likes the old town. Kaide hides from the demon princess Kokonoe and encounters a shadow eater that consumes her shadow. Genpachi finds her and is relieved to have her back. In Yoshinaya, Shino thanks Kobungo's mother for accepting Takanobu, Saki, and Yana to work there. As they talk, Kaide reveals her discontent about sharing the mansion with other spirits and about her loss of power due to the Shadow Eater. Shino assures her that her shadow will return with the full moon. Shino tells Kaide about the gems he's searching for and says she can help find them, but he needs her complete form. Shino decides to search for them while Kaide reflects on Shino's strength and his concerns about Ao's growing power with Satomi's gem. Later, at the inn, Shino and the boys relax when Daikaku appears, revealing that he has moved to the capital with his sister. Kaide informs Shino that Daikaku also has a gem, although he didn't know its importance. It turns out everyone in the room has a gem, except Satomi, whose gem is with Ao. Now, Shino has 2 more gems to find, completing 6 out of 8. That night, Shino takes Kaide outside, taking advantage of the moonlight to make shadows visible. He uses Kaide's shadow as bait to attract the Shadow Eaters, who relent under Shino's threat and return her shadow. With this, Kaide regains her complete form, and Shino promises to continue searching for the remaining gems. We discover that Nachi wasn't originally Kaide's master. It was her older brother, Yuri. Kaide switched to Nachi because Yuri didn't believe in spirits. After Yuri's death, Nachi accepts Kaide and assures her that she's not to blame for her brother's death. Kaide feels comforted and settles in Nachi's lap until the chair breaks. Shortly after, Dosetsu arrives in the imperial capital and receives directions to find the Kanaya Inn. Meanwhile, at the inn, Shino and Genpachi enjoy a snowball fight. They are delighted to see Dosetsu and the Snow Princess, who tell them that Dosetsu is in the city to search for his sister, Mutsuki. They decide to start their search in the Red District, known for housing orphaned children. Sosuke works at the church with Kaho, while Hamaji goes shopping with Yana. Meanwhile, Kobungo and Kano also search for a red-haired girl in the Red District, where they encounter Asen, who offers to help. However, Kano warns Kobungo about mentioning the demon's name and tells him to be careful, as naming it would make a pact with it. Asen begins to search for the red-haired girl, leaving a trail of bodies behind. Shino joins Hamaji and Yana in the search, while Sosuke continues working at the church. Asen takes Kaho, but soon realizes she is not the person he is looking for. Shino learns of what happened and orders Murasame to find Kaho. Despite Asen managing to escape, Shino is relieved to find Kaho safe and sound. Hamaji and Yana continue their shopping, reminiscing about past moments. The military investigates the murders in the city, noting that all the victims have red hair. Kobungo blames himself for the situation and suggests tracking down Asen, but Genpachi decides to wait until nightfall to take action. Dosetsu is attacked by Asen because of his red hair, but Asen withdraws upon seeing the Snow Princess with him. Asen mistakes Hamaji for his target and pursues her, but he is stopped by Dosetsu and the Snow Princess, who injure him but let him escape. Dosetsu encounters Hamaji, recognizing her as his sister, while Shino and Yana appear. Hamaji lies about her past, but Dosetsu knows the truth and confronts her. He hands her a hairpin and reveals that he has opened a shop in the capital to be close to her. With tears in his eyes, Dosetsu bids farewell. Hamaji confesses to Shino that she truly remembers Dosetsu as her brother, but didn't want to talk to him for fear that he might have forgotten their promise. That night, Fuki consumes Asen as punishment for his crimes. The group gathers and discovers that Dosetsu also possesses a gem, bringing the total to 7. Shortly after, Satomi informs Shino that a child from Ikura village disappeared a year ago when he went into the forest to search for bellflower roots for his sick mother. The child has returned, but remains unchanged from when he disappeared. Satomi wants Shino to go to the village and examine the child. Shortly after, Shino and Sosuke head to the village. Shino enrolls in the primary school, and the teacher tells the students that he is a transfer student from the imperial capital. Shino sits near the class prefect, Shinobu. Looking around, Shino sees the boy he came to find sitting on the other side of Shinobu. Shinobu notices Shino staring at the boy and tells him his name is Akihiko. Akihiko's hair is now white, and he seems to keep himself distant from everyone. Sosuke and Shino stay at the Kakiya Inn. Tai is an elderly woman and the owner of the inn, and Shinobu is her grandson. While in class, Shino notices flowers attached to the window next to where Akihiko is sitting, but it seems like no one else can see them. Upon returning to the inn that day, Shino and Sosuke share what they have learned. Sosuke tells Shino that Tai warned him about the mountains, claiming they take away children. In Akihiko's house, his father scolds him for his silence. He is frustrated because Akihiko hasn't uttered a word since he returned and doesn't eat, only drinks water. Akihiko recalls the day his mother went to the clinic and regrets not telling her that he didn't hate her, but rather hated the illness afflicting her. The next day, Shino asks Shinobu why he doesn't want to leave Akihiko alone. Shinobu says that Akihiko tends to do strange things when left alone. Shinobu goes to the diary room, leaving Shino in charge of Akihiko. While they are sitting, plants suddenly sprout from the ground and try to engulf Akihiko, but he tells them he can't go with them, and the plants immediately disappear. On that same day, the monk Chudai, whom Shino and Sosuke encountered on the train, arrives at the inn. Chudai is surprised to find Sosuke and Shino there, and immediately tells Tai to get rid of the children. However, Tai says she can't because they are there at Satomi's request. Frustrated, Chudai starts placing talismans all around the house. Shinobu tells Shino that Chudai is a good person because he once saved his life and still visits because he is concerned about him. Shortly after, Akihiko's mother decides to leave the clinic to visit her son at home. She hasn't seen him in a long time and believes he has already recovered. Meanwhile, Shino and Sosuke head to the mountains. They ask Shinobu how to get there, and Shino tells him that he has something to check in the mountains. Shortly after, Akihiko's mother arrives home to find her son in the backyard, sitting alone in the cold. Shino, Sosuke, and Shinobu are also on their way to the mountains. Shino reveals that she wants to see the bellflowers because they don't bloom at this time of year, and she believes Akihiko went to fetch them to help his sick mother. It's said that the flowers have healing effects for coughs, and that must have been the reason he went to find them. In the village, Akihiko turns to his mother and finally utters some words. He is overjoyed to see his mother and embraces her tightly. Akihiko's father sees this and holds them both in his arms. Akihiko asks his mother about her illness, and she replies that she is no longer sick and that she no longer needs the flowers. On the mountain, Shino, Sosuke, and Shinobu are astonished to discover that the bellflowers are blooming out of season. They can hear the flowers saying that they have fulfilled their promise. At that moment, Akihiko's body turns to dust as he holds his mother. Shino, Sosuke, and Shinobu find Akihiko's body among the flowers. The flowers reveal that Akihiko's final wish was to send flowers to his mother. After the events with Akihiko, Shino and the others return home, where Shinobu sleeps for more than a week. Upon waking, the first thing he mentions is his hunger, which is typical for Chudai and Tai, who are used to his prolonged slumber. Shinobu reveals that he is 22 years old, although he still looks like a child. He recalls disappearing in the mountains at the age of 6 and being found by Chudai 10 years later, with no memory of that period. Shino notices that Shinobu also has the same birthmark as them. Meanwhile, someone breaks down a barrier in the forest, causing Shino to worry about the birthmark on Shinobu's arm. Later, Chudai reveals that there are rumors about a being in the mountains that takes unfortunate children, like Shinobu, who was kidnapped 16 years ago when they found his mother dead. Chudai rescued him and raised him as his own son. One night, Shinobu suddenly gets up and is surrounded by birds. A unicorn spirit, Natsumi, is with him, but before they can intervene, the Tengu takes him away, claiming he is his son. Chudai, Sosuke, and Shino begin tracking the Tengu. Shinobu wakes up in the mountain, recalling a dream in which a Tengu named Kagetsu tells his brother Hazuki that Shinobu is now his son. Upon waking, he sees Hazuki, who reveals that Kagetsu has passed away. Shino and Sosuke reach the mountain's entrance, but encounter a barrier. Before Murasame can break it, Ao appears, revealing that he is on a different mission and warning that the princess will thwart their plans to gather the 8 gems. Meanwhile, on the mountain, Shinobu is shocked to learn of Kagetsu's death and recovers his lost memories, recalling the care Kagetsu provided for him. Back at the inn, Chudai survives a fall off a cliff, but they decide to take him back home. Tai reveals that Shinobu is the son of a Tengu, explaining his wild nature. Hazuki reveals to Shinobu that Kagetsu is not completely dead, and later encounters Ao in the forest, where the latter reveals his desire to obtain Shinobu's gem. Hazuki allows Ao to take the gem, but Ao takes Shinobu to where Kagetsu's body is, finding him apparently alive, but unconscious. Ao offers to restore Kagetsu's life in exchange for the power he gave. Shinobu is about to accept when Hazuki intervenes and is attacked by Ao. Shino steps in and is severely injured. At that moment, Shinobu's wound glows and the gem falls out, while the other 7 gems begin to shine. Ao approaches Shinobu and Hazuki, but Hazuki quickly picks up the gem. Ao tells him not to back out of their deal, as he was supposed to gain access in exchange for breaking the barrier. Tengu creates a wind attack and strikes Ao, allowing Hazuki to escape with Shinobu. Ao confronts Kagetsu and suggests that he is responsible for hiding the gem inside Shinobu's body. Later, Hazuki gives Shinobu half of his life force to keep him from dying. Shinobu wakes up and feels guilty about Kagetsu's death, but Hazuki scolds him for thinking that way. Suddenly, they realize the mountain is on fire, set by Ao, who is trying to force them out into the open. They attempt to escape, but run into Ao. He demands that Hazuki fulfill his part of the deal, but Hazuki refuses, leading to a fight between the two. Ao injures Hazuki, but Hazuki manages to create a fire barrier around Ao, giving them time to escape. Meanwhile, Shino and Sosuke are on their way to the mountain and see animals running towards the mountain and the fire. Hazuki tells Natsume to take Shinobu away from the mountain to keep him safe. Despite Shinobu's resistance, Natsume grabs him and starts to fly. Shinobu struggles with Natsume until he ends up falling from the sky, but his wings activate and help him land gently. Hazuki heads towards Kagetsu's body, stating that this is their destiny, to become human, causing Kagetsu's body to turn to dust. Then he falls to his knees, ready to die, when Ao appears. Ao mocks Hazuki for becoming weak because of a child, but Hazuki responds that it is a parent's duty to make sacrifices for their children. Shinobu, on the other hand, now considers the mountain his home and is ready to protect it. He activates his wind energy to try to put out the fire. In the midst of this, Shino and Sosuke appear, and Shino assures Shinobu that they can help. They use their abilities to help extinguish the fire, and shortly after, the fire is completely out. Natsume appears and is happy to see that Shinobu is safe. Together, they climb the mountain to find Hazuki, but only see traces of red liquid on the ground, assuming Hazuki is dead. Shinobu cries for Hazuki, but Shino assures him that he was able to protect him and save the mountain, which counts for something important. Elsewhere, Ao delivers Hazuki's body to the princess, who appears to have used some type of water to heal him and erase his memories. Meanwhile, Shinobu decides to follow Shino and Sosuke to the imperial capital to hunt down Ao. He reveals that he has the last gem with him. Shino realizes that they have now gathered all 8 gems, while Sosuke notices that he can't see anything through his left eye, but chooses not to mention it. Not long after, the trio arrives in the capital, where Shino senses that something is amiss with Sosuke. They head to the Yoshinaya, where Shinobu will be staying, and collect the gem, recalling the story of the 8 dogs, and believing that the princess will soon awaken to grant wishes. However, they are concerned about Sosuke's missing gem, leading Shino to blame herself during the meeting. Daikaku shows the boys a third eye on his forehead, which controls Megu to eliminate the shadow devourers present. Kokono explains that it's an evil eye, capable of perceiving and destroying non-humans. Shino deduces that the eye comes from cats and is the work of Noro, who endowed Daikaku with the spirit of the cat. After the meeting, Asako reveals to Shino that Sosuke cannot see with his left eye and feels no pain in his left arm, suggesting that Ao has stolen Sosuke's eye. Shino blames herself for not realizing sooner and flees to the mansion. In the mansion, Sosuke has a meeting with Satomi, where he tells her about the 8th gem and the possible reference to Princess Tamazusa. Satomi narrates the story of Tamazusa, who lost her 2 children due to the demands of a government official. Sosuke promises to do something about it before Shino finds out, but the latter scolds him for not telling him about his left eye. Sosuke promises to take care of things. The next day, Shino agrees to keep Ayane company, who is recovering from a cold thanks to Hamaji's medicine. While they converse, Konami seeks out Sosuke to ask for help with Finnegan, who is in the mansion. Sosuke manages to speak with Finnegan and find a way to make him leave quickly. After visiting Ayane, Shino asks Chikagi to give Ayane more freedom, arguing that she should have her own life and not be confined to the compound. Shino then apologizes to Sosuke for his behavior and encounters Finnegan on the stairs. Finnegan mentions Shino's eyes, triggering a memory sealed by Satomi. Shino faints and is taken to his room, where he has a flashback of his childhood, singing a poem with his brother. Upon waking up, Satomi is present and completes the poem. Shino asks her how Finnegan knows his mother, but Satomi suggests not to worry about it and focus on the gem mission. Shino becomes angry, wanting to fix what is happening to Sosuke. Satomi reveals that the gems choose their owners, and that the gem has started to choose Shino instead of Sosuke. At that moment, Sosuke collapses in the hallway, and his birthmark disappears from his body, appearing on Ao's body. Ao claims that he's not done yet and wants to make sure he gets everything before resting. Sosuke is taken to the mansion's medic, while Shino blames himself for allowing Ao to steal the gem from him. Satomi warns that Sosuke's soul is gradually being drawn to the underworld. After fleeing the mansion, Shino begins searching for clues about Ao's whereabouts. Kokoneo notices an unusual increase in the number of spirits in the capital, and Shino starts questioning people on the street for information. A woman leads him to an alley where she reveals her true demonic form and attacks Shino. Asako intervenes to help, but they face a bigger problem when the woman summons demonic rats. Kaede appears to assist, eliminating the rats and defeating the demon. After the confrontation, Shino pleads with Kaede to help him search for the gem, and Kaede reluctantly agrees. Kaede reveals that all the gems are in the capital, and the last one they seek is in the old church in the castle district, where Ao is also located. Shino prepares to go to the church, and Daikaku, Inusaka, and Shinobu offer to accompany him, believing he will need assistance. Meanwhile, Genpachi and Kobungo learn of the situation and head to the church along with other members of the group. Upon arriving at the church and venturing into the basement, they encounter human skeletons. Ao appears and refuses to return the gem, claiming that he has already been chosen by it. Princess Tamazusa reveals herself to the group and unleashes a horde of undead against them, triggering an intense battle. At the church headquarters, Finnegan has ordered the creation of a powerful barrier, using the lives of spirits to protect themselves from the imminent danger. Satomi is about to leave to help Shino, but Lilith and Finnegan stop her, warning her that her departure could affect the barrier and render it useless. The battle in the ancient church continues, and the undead keep pouring in. Daikaku uses his evil eye to eliminate as many as he can, but the situation remains challenging. Genpachi and Kobungo arrive in the basement to join the fight. Suddenly, Hazuki appears, but he's not the same Hazuki that Shinobu knows. This Hazuki has lost everything and poses a difficult challenge for Shinobu. Meanwhile, Shino continues to fight against Ao. Dosetsu's arrival brings joy to Tamazusa, who activates a magical barrier to remove the gems from their bodies and nullify their powers. Sosuke rapidly deteriorates, and Tamazusa forms a circle with the gems intending to summon Princess Fuse and absorb her powers. Despite the boy's efforts, Shino advances toward the altar, where Tamazusa plans to use him as a vessel for her dark purposes. Murmuring Sosuke's name, Shino collapses to the ground. Shino begins to recall all the moments he has shared with Sosuke, including the promise to always protect him. As he lies in his own pool of bodily fluid, the gems activate a portal to summon Fuse. Back at the church, Satomi tells Finnegan that it will be catastrophic if they allow Tamazusa to proceed with her plan. While hiding in the church, Tamazusa begins to receive power from the energy source that is entering. She approaches Shino and lifts him up. Shino opens his eyes to see Tamazusa, and this reminds him that she was the one who killed Sosuke. This creates in him a determination to make a wish, to bring Sosuke back to life. His wish comes true, and Sosuke opens his eyes where he lies. At that moment, Tamazusa begins to lose control over Fuse and the gems. Princess Fuse disappears, and the gems return to their respective owners. The duty gem also rejects Ao as its owner, and the birthmark leaves Ao's body to appear on Sosuke's body. Sosuke wakes up and discovers that Shino is responsible for his return to life. Ozaki suggests that Shino must have exhausted himself from fighting so hard to retrieve his gem, and Sosuke realizes that Shino might be in danger. He jumps out of bed, transforms into his dog form, and starts running towards the old church. Now in the church, Tamazusa asks Ao to hand over Shino, but he refuses. Tamazusa is surprised that Sosuke chooses to defy her. She draws her sword, and Tamazusa orders Hazuki to take down Ao. A fight breaks out between the two, but Satomi arrives just in time to break through Tamazusa's barrier. All the boys immediately regain their powers. Genpachi and Kango go after Hazuki, while Shinobu flies toward Shino to protect him. Tamazusa realizes she has lost the battle and decides to retreat. Shino has lost so much bodily fluid that this starts to severely affect him. Murasame, his sword, starts to stir due to its need for red liquid. Murasame begins to consume Shino and transforms into its giant and terrifying form, an image that can be seen far and wide throughout the city. Kango, Genpachi, and Shinobu try to control Shino, but he seems to be out of control. None of them can withstand the strength and power of Murasami. In the midst of the chaos, Sosuke arrives and shouts at his friend to listen to him. Although Shino seems unable to hear over the noise, Murasami has him under control. Murasami attacks Sosuke relentlessly, but he is not ready to give up. Sosuke proceeds to walk towards Murasami while murmuring Shino's name. Satomi and Kade use their spirit animals to try to give Sosuke more access to Murasami, but he easily knocks them out. Finally, Shino hears Sosuke's voice, though he still can't control himself. He tells Sosuke to run and leave him alone, but Sosuke isn't willing to do so. He reminds Shino of the promise he made to him in Hamaji, that he would always be there to protect him. Murasami opens its mouth and is about to consume Sosuke, but Shino screams loudly and manages to stop it, regaining control over Murasami. Shino returns to his normal state, and Sosuke quickly grabs hold of him. The rest of the gang also appears and surrounds the two to see how Shino is doing. As everyone celebrates Shino's return, Ao gets up and quietly walks away. Now at the church headquarters, Finnegan and Lilith express their relief that Murasami has calmed down and everything is under control. Later, Shino talks with Satomi in his office and asks if he was the one in his memory holding his hand, but Satomi refuses to answer. Shino knows that person is Satomi, but just wants confirmation. He also inquires about Tamazusa, but Satomi refuses to give a response. Satomi then reminds Shino that he still has the mission to locate the last gem, which is with Ao. Shino complains that there has been no progress since the mission began, but Sosuke reminds him that they have friends by their side. Shino then vows to Sosuke that he will retrieve his gem until the end. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get new anime recaps.